This is Truth Wins every time, and this is Briscoe. This is another map that is located on the Library of Congress's website, a map of New France containing Canada, Louisiana, and North America, according to the patent granted by the King of France to Monsieur Crozat, dated the 14th of September, 1712, and registered in the Parliament of Paris the 24th of the same month. This map is really interesting um, in that just the way they had, and this is again 1700s, early 1700s. Um, France has a huge presence in North America. In fact, they call it New France. Um, Up here in this corner up here, you've got Newfound Land, and I know they call it Newfoundland, um, but I wonder why it was so new, yet all this is not. But the thing that really has always intrigued me is this area of North America, which is where I live. I live in Tacoma, Washington, which is about 30 minutes or roughly 30 miles south of Seattle. And it seems like, there's in these older maps always the depiction of um, you got, Texas here, and then, you get up into this area, and it says right here, parts unknown. Um, I don't know why the Pacific Northwest has always been kind of the last. Now, of course, if you go off of the story that we settled in from the upper northeast corner and then made our way in towards the country, but at the same time, there are, um, there were tribes out here. There were actually buildings, and this kind of goes along the whole mud flood reset, um, Tartarian type buildings and structures. You can find them out here in the Oregon and Washington area. And then, right above the Washington state line on the north part of the Washington state, you have Vancouver, BC, British Columbia. And so, which also has older buildings. And you can go watch John Levi's videos depicting that. Another good channel to watch would be Wooden Nickels. Um, a lot of those guys are doing some good research on the history of this continent and what existed prior to what we're told as the settling of this continent. You got this whole thing that talks about sometime in the mid 1800s there was a reset of some kind, and then we see the repopulation of this continent in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's done by way of um, people that adults that were programmed as children because child trafficking is something that has been going on for hundreds of years. But then, you get the child trafficking type thing happening in the 1800s. You get this reset, and now the children that they were trafficking at that time, they bring out now as adults. They're programmed to basically help in part with some of the things that are going on in this country. You have all these different World's Fairs. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, so you had the 1904 World's Fair down on the Forest Park Fairgrounds. And I've been to Forest Park many times throughout my life. I lived, born and raised in St. Louis for 30 years. And so there's only maybe a handful, if that, of some of these buildings left from the fair. And when I discuss it with my mother, she said, "Oh, well, they, and the theory is they made these buildings out of plaster of Paris, and they were intentionally built for a temporary purpose, which was less than a year." And to me, that seems like a lot of work to build those types of buildings. Which, if you find some of these older photographs of the buildings, another person that has a great video is Michelle Gibson. She actually has a video about the Louisiana Purchase and the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri. And St. Louis is always dogged on as being, like it's from the South, which actually, when you really think about it, it's almost dead center. Dead center was probably more Kansas City or even a little bit of the state of Kansas, which I've always thought Kansas was a flat state. But if you go watch Wooden Nichols videos, you'll find out that actually Kansas has a lot of topography that we don't know about or get to see because of the way our interstate highways are designed, and also the state highways, that they are designed to avoid a lot of these types of views. Another channel that talks about that is Enslaved by No Media. Unfortunately, I am in talks with Dave by Enslaved by No Media. He has taken down his channel temporarily to retool it, but he has some great videos up talking about how you can see further north. You can actually see 3 to 4 times further to the north from a 600 to, say, 1,000-foot vantage point versus looking to the south. So what his contention is, by way of this footage that he's captured, and he's done some painstaking measurements. He's even used levels and other things to prove this. And basically, when he zooms out with a Nikon P900 or P1000, he can actually see 40 miles out to the north, but then when you turn around, you can't see quite as far. So his contention is that the Earth is tilted at a 2.39 degree slope, and so that's actually a very slight slope. However, if you think about stadium seating, which is a very drastic slope, but in that type of thing, if you think about that, you're only going to be able to see so far if you look up. If you're at a stadium and you're at say in the middle, and you look up, you obviously are going to get capped off by what is behind the stadium seating because of the fact that you're looking up, and there's further stuff behind that you can't see because of the slant of the seating. Whereas if you turn around and look down into the stadium, you can see all the way down in to the stadium. There's nothing obscuring your view. And so I hope he brings his work back. I thought it was very valuable research. So anyway, back to this map here. I find the fact that the Pacific Northwest is not something that is highly detailed. They say that Lewis and Clark took their expedition and made it all the way out to Oregon. However, there's just not a whole lot in the way of older maps, older writings, and things of that nature that talk about things of the Pacific Northwest. Yet it's a pretty interesting area out here. I've been out here for 20 years, actually almost 21 years now, and it's a beautiful lay of the land. However, the overall mentality of people on the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest is diluted, in my opinion. And I think some of that has to do with ley lines, possibly, and the energies that are derived from ley lines. And that ley lines and their energies is a thought that I've had going back probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, because of the fact that if you look at geography and if you look at the map of the United States of America, you'll notice that the coast states seem to be more liberal or progressive versus the states that are inland from the coasts. And my contention is it has something to do with the ley lines, and then it also has something to do with the salt water. I think the salt water produces something in the air that changes the air that we breathe. And so the coast states always have a tendency to be more liberal, and I wouldn't call it necessarily free thinking, even though that's what a lot of people would want to say. But I do think that there is some kind of an effect that is had by salt water that causes people to think. To me, it's delusional. I do have more of a conservative, right-leaning slant. However, I'm probably more center. I'm more of a moderate conservative. But yeah. Anyway, so just wanted to show that they have this map at the Library of Congress. It's called the New France, containing Canada, Louisiana, and in North America. And again, these maps are put on Library of Congress's website, which is a government website, as indicated by the actual URL, loc.gov. And the fact that they claim that they put these maps up down in their rights and access, which basically is saying that these map collections are for educational purposes, which is kind of, it goes against what they're trying to educate us on with their other arm of the government, which is known as NASA. And I personally don't believe anything that NASA puts out. I don't believe in science as modern people think of it today. I believe it's called scientism. I think science is really more in a basic realm, because all these quantum physics and rocket science and all this other stuff is based on this diluted thinking that doesn't really work, and it's proven itself not to work. Whereas if you take basic science, just, for example, baking soda and vinegar, you mix them together, they have a reaction. Now, that is a physics reaction, but it's simply just two different type of substances mixing together to have an effect. So, as far as, when you take the scientism of there being a vacuum in space, I would imagine that as big as they say space is, or what we at least see in the sky, that type of a vacuum would be so great that there's nothing on Earth that could even compare to that vacuum. Yet we're able to propel ourselves through that vacuum somehow. But there are videos that show that you cannot even ignite gunpowder in a human-made vacuum. And there are videos on YouTube about that. You'll see a video where somebody tries to ignite some gunpowder or flint, and it does not really ignite. It barely fizzles. So, and that's because the lack of any kind of oxygen, which then provides an atmosphere or something for the ignition to work with. And so my contention is oxygen is actually just a very thin form of water. If you think about it, we're in the womb for 9 months, and we're breathing fluid. And this is not because we came from fish in the water. That's a bunch of BS. So basically, we're taking in and breathing this embryonic fluid as babies for 9 months, okay? And then all of a sudden we're popped out, and we have to be spanked to be able to open our lungs up to be able to breathe air. And then there's also the fact that when you get in higher altitudes, they say that the oxygen gets thinner, which then causes problems for people, because everything is based on density and buoyancy. And so the oxygen down here, right off of sea level and up to a certain amount of feet, is a different density than the oxygen, or lesser oxygen than what's above at that point, and so on. And so oxygen, really, we call it air, but it's a form of a liquid. It's a very thin form of a liquid that is just less dense than actual water. Because if you think about what oxygen is, or what water is H2O, right? And it's two hydrogens to an oxygen. So oxygen, really, the air that we breathe, is a form of thin water. So I know that was kind of off topic here, but I would highly recommend doing some research on the loc.gov website for not only maps, but I'm sure, and I just started doing research on these things as far as through this mode. I actually have been somebody who does not believe we live on a spinning globe for, at least 5 years, probably 6 years. I came to that realization back in 2015 when, after taking a trip to San Diego for my son's 8th birthday and taking pictures of the ocean down in San Diego, which is where Legoland is, and realizing that the water and the ocean are extremely flat, especially when the ocean is still. And you can't have that kind of flatness on a globe. You just can't. Water always finds its own level, and it also runs down to its form in levelness, not because of gravity, but because of density and buoyancy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I shouldn't have to say this because for eons now, people have been saying like, share, and subscribe. However, I would like this material to start getting out to the masses, and so I'm going to say like, share, subscribe. If you want to leave a comment below, that's fine. If it's something that is absurd, I will be sure to address it and let you know as such. However, I am open to hearing people's thoughts on these matters, but just remember, the Big Bang was something that was brought on by people who lacked faith in God. And so the Big Bang is what brings on the heliocentric model, which is a discrediting of God's creation, because science wants to get rid of God. And in that regard, science becomes its own religion. But just remember, there is a creator, there is a God. He loves us and cares for us. And as long as you acknowledge him and put on the full armor of God and repent for your shortcomings, I believe that he will take care of you. I have seen him take care of me and other people close to me all throughout my life without any kind of worldly explanation. So anyway, again, this is Truth Wins Every Time. I'm Briscoe. I'm out.